This is Lagos State, and if you draw a line from Ikorodu down through Oshodi to Badagry, you will notice that nearly everything sits to the west of it. Alimosho alone, one LGA on the western mainland, has more residents than Ekpe and Ibejuleki combined, even though Ekpe and Ibejuleki together are physically larger than Alimosho by a factor of 5. For every person living in the east, about 20 people live in the west. In a state this overcrowded, that gap is almost impossible to explain at first glance. So why does this exist? And what exactly is going on here? Now the answer starts with the land itself. Eastern Lagos isn't like the mainland you probably picture when you think of Lagos. The eastern corridor from Lekki through Ibejuleki all the way to Ekpe is built on a narrow coastal barrier peninsula. Ocean to the south, Lagos Lagoon to the north, and between those two bodies of water, a strip of land that in places is barely a few kilometers wide. That geography makes it beautiful, but it also makes it extremely difficult to build on. In the fast-growing areas near Lekki, wetlands have diminished by 42% in just the last decade as developers fill in lands to build on it. But that doesn't solve the underlying problem, it creates new ones. Encroachment of mangroves and wetlands has diminished the land's natural ability to absorb excess water, which means that when it rains heavily, there is nowhere for the water to go. And in Lagos, it rains very heavily. In July 2024, a single 10-hour rainfall event triggered devastating flooding across Lekki, damaging homes, businesses, and roads across the city's fastest developing corridors. And this is in Lekki Phase 1, the wealthy part. Further east, the situation is even more devastating. But geography alone doesn't explain the emptiness. Lagos Island floods too. Ajegunle floods. Half the city is literally built on a swamp, and people live there anyway because Lagos is Lagos. So what has actually kept people away from the eastern side of Lagos for so long? The honest answer is access, or the lack of it. The Lekki-Ekpe Expressway was built in the 1980s during the administration of Lateef Jakonde at a time when the axis was just a rural settlement. It was never designed for the kind of traffic a growing megacity would eventually demand. For most of the corridor's history, there has been one road in and one road out, one expressway connecting the entire eastern peninsula to the rest of Lagos. The western mainland had its own problems, but it had something the east didn't. Multiple roads, multiple routes to the economic centers. The third mainland bridge, the Kata Bridge, the Eko Bridge. If one route was blocked, you had other options. On the eastern peninsula, you had one road, and when that road broke, everything stopped. Now here's where it gets interesting, because the east isn't just sitting there empty, something is happening out there, and it's big.
Let's talk about how you made this amount of money, which is by far the largest amount of money that any individual has in Africa.
In May 2023, the Dangote petrol refinery was officially commissioned in the Lekki Free Trade Zone in Ibejuleki. It is by capacity the largest single-train petroleum refinery in the world, and it is not alone. The Lekki Deep Sea Port is designed to be the biggest deep sea port in sub-Saharan Africa, positioned to attract investment in the range of 20 billion in the first few years of operation. Add to that the Lekki Free Trade Zone, an airport in planning stages, and a proposed harbour city, and suddenly the Eastern Corridor looks less like the forgotten end of Lagos and more like the beginning of something new. But even with all these developments, there is still a big problem.
How many minutes this side will stay then before moving on to the other side? So they don't consider people moving from Chevron to the major road. It's just like a kind of punishment. It should not be.
Every day, the Lekki-Ekpe Expressway now bears the weight of hundreds of articulated trucks ferrying cargo from the Lekki Free Trade Zone, the Dangote Refinery, and the Lekki Deep Sea Port, all funneling through a single corridor with only one major entry and exit route. The roads that couldn't handle residential traffic now has to handle industrial traffic on top of it, and the results are predictable. Now there is a pattern that shows up in underpopulated corridors everywhere. Build something large enough and people will follow. Oil was discovered near the town of Kermit in West Texas in 1926, and the population jumped from nothing to thousands within a year. The east of Lagos is experiencing something similar. A massive industrial anchor that was supposed to unlock everything around it, and to some extent it is. The Dangote refinery has brought infrastructure growth, real estate development, and job opportunities to what was seen as a relatively underdeveloped area of Lagos. Land prices in Ibejuleki that were almost nothing a decade ago are now being quoted at prices that would have seemed absurd in 2015. But there's a version of this story that doesn't end well. Because everything the East has going for it, the refinery, the port, and the free trade zone, is industrial. It generates workers and logistics, not communities. And if the only reason people move east is to service a refinery or work a port, you don't get a city, you get a camp. The places that have actually filled up over Lagos's history did so because they offered something beyond work. They offered proximity to other people, to markets, to schools, and to the informal economy that Lagos runs on. So where does that leave Eastern Lagos? Maybe it feels in the way the West did, slowly, then all at once, as the infrastructure catches up and the cost of land keeps pushing people further from the center. Maybe the Dangote effect unlocks something genuine, and in 20 years, you're watching a video about why everyone is moving to the eastern side of Lagos. Or maybe the geography wins. Maybe the flooding gets worse. As the sea levels rise, the single expressway stays congested no matter how many times they rehabilitate it, and the east remains what it has always been: vast, largely empty, and full of plans that never quite become cities. Eastern Lagos isn't empty because nobody wants it. It's empty because Lagos has never quite gotten around to making it work. Whether the Dangote refinery finally forces that conversation or just adds industrial traffic to an already broken road is the question the next 10 years will answer.